Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show tailored just for you, where we take your sources and really unpack the most compelling insights. Today, we're plunging into a topic that honestly sounds like something straight out of a dark sci-fi novel.
Oh, absolutely.
But, looking at the material you've shared, it's actually happening right now.
Right. And the sources you sent over Forbes, CNA, Gentleman's Journal, and that really interesting YouTube piece with Douglas Rushkoff, they paint a picture that's, well, it's incredible, but also kind of alarming.
Yeah, alarming is a good word.
Mm.
So our mission here is to try and cut through the noise. We want to figure out what's actually driving this trend among the super rich. Get specific about the kind of, elaborate preparations they're making. And maybe most importantly, think about what this trend might signal about the future we're all heading towards. All based just on these sources you gave us.
Exactly. And I think the place to start is probably the most, striking image from all this material. The sheer scale and luxury involved. Forget like canned beans and a flashlight in the basement. We're seeing the ultra-wealthy tech, billionaires, celebrities, you name it, building these structures that just completely redefine survival.
It's incredible, isn't it? That Forbes piece really makes it clear this isn't just about basic security.
Well,
It seems to be about maintaining a certain lifestyle. They talk about amenities that sound like a five-star resort, not a bunker.
yeah, swimming pools, bowling alleys,
Bowling alleys.
gun ranges, game rooms, media rooms, saunas, gyms. It's prepping, sure, but it feels more like escaping to a whole different world, not just surviving this one.
Totally. And the companies doing this are apparently booming.
Oh, absolutely. Rising S bunkers in Texas, Forbes mentioned them, saw inquiries jump over 2,000%
2000.
since the pandemic began. That kind of surge isn't just random, it shows a real shift in what's driving these purchases.
Wow. Okay, so 2000%. That's staggering. It's not just a fringe thing then, it's a real industry boom. So what kind of prices and scale are we actually talking about here?
Well, Forbes gives some pretty eye-watering numbers. They do offer smaller units, maybe under 40K, and a 10 by 20-foot shelter is about $58,000.
Okay, still a lot, but maybe conceivable for some.
But the top end,
Okay.
yeah, that's where it gets kind of nuts. Their aristocrat bunker, listed at $8.35 million.
8.35 million.
Yep. Designed for 50 people. It comes with, custom kitchens, a huge garage they call a motor cave.
For motor cave.
Yeah, greenhouses for growing food sustainably, full plumbing, septic, dual power sources on and off grid.
A greenhouse.
Yeah,
Underground. That's not just survival, that's recreating the surface, but safe.
precisely. And the security is intense. The Aristocrat package includes this above-ground safe house that's designed to look totally ordinary.
Right.
But it's got half-inch plate steel walls, bullet-resistant, a massive blast door, double-line steel, 2-foot deadbolt, and the bunker entrance itself, hidden behind a false wall with a secret lock.
Maximum security, hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
Wild.
Exactly. And they offer even bigger ones. There's a presidential for $4.2 million, multiple bedrooms. The Ultra, get this, is 6,000 square feet.
6,000, that's bigger than most houses.
It's basically an underground mansion. 2 kitchens, 2 master suites, gym, shooting range, and, that crucial greenhouse again.
Forbes also had that personal story, right, about Terry in Ohio.
Yeah.
That stuck with me.
Yeah, Terry's story's interesting. He built a 1,500 square foot bunker, bigger than a lot of homes.
And what was interesting was it wasn't under his house, but nearby on his property. So that's through some kind of hidden hatch.
Exactly, and he customized it completely. Bedrooms, family room, office, kitchen, even a gun room. Cost him over $1 million.
$1 million. Wow.
And what's really revealing, I think, is why he built it and when. This is before the pandemic hit.
Oh, right.
He told Forbes his biggest fear wasn't nuclear war or an asteroid. It was civil unrest. That quote about what comes after. A big disruption, people fighting over food, toilet paper. That was his main driver. He even does dress rehearsals with his family, making sure they could stay down there for 6 months.
Wow. That really grounds the fear, doesn't it? Makes it less abstract.
Yeah, it does. And Gentleman's Journal backs up this whole industry trend. They mention other players like Survival Condo, Optimum Bunkers, who apparently market ultra-luxury fortified underground residences.
Ultra-luxury fortified underground residences. Sounds about right.
And Vivos, too, all catering to this high-end market, especially since the pandemic surge.
And it's not just bunkers, is it? Gentleman's Journal brought up Elon Musk.
Right, Musk's whole SpaceX thing, colonizing Mars, that's framed as another kind of elite escape plan. He talks about establishing a seed of human civilization out there, just in case of, World War III or some kind of dark ages back on Earth.
Which, as that source pointed out, kind of implies that escaping Earth would also be, well, survival of the richest?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which leads us right into the big why. Why this extreme level of preparation? What are they really afraid of?
And why this specific, super expensive response? Like you said, Terry's story from Forbes in 2020 pointed towards immediate social anxieties during the pandemic, civil unrest, resource scarcity.
Yeah, and Gary Lynch from Rising S Bunkers, he echoed that in the Forbes piece. He sees the real danger not as one specific event, war, earthquake, whatever, but the social collapse that could follow any major shock.
But the scale of prep goes beyond just digging holes, right? CNA source really zooms in on Mark Zuckerberg's place in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, the Kolo Ranch on Kauai. It's huge, 5.5 million square meters.
That's massive.
And while it does have a big underground bunker connected by tunnels and everything.
Right, I remember that part.
It's way more than just a bunker. It's multiple mansions, tree houses, massive infrastructure for water purification, desalination, storage.
CNA mentioned a 2-meter wall, huge security presence, NDAs for local workers. Sounds very controlled. Secretive, even.
Extremely controlled. And CNA points out he's not alone in Hawaii. Other billionaires, Oprah, Larry Ellison, Frank Vandersloot, they've also been buying up enormous tracts of land there.
So it suggests a trend towards creating these large, private, almost self-governing territories.
Seems like it. And this is where that YouTube source, the one with Douglas Rushkoff, adds this whole other layer.
Yeah, Rushkoff. He's a media theorist, been looking at tech's impact for ages.
Yeah.
Used to be more optimistic, now he's pretty critical, right? Warning about a cyberpunk future.
Exactly. High tech, but maybe low quality of life for most. High inequality, dehumanizing, that sort of thing.
And he had this incredible personal story.
Yeah, really fascinating. He got invited not for a speech, but for a very high-paying consultation with 5 unnamed billionaires out in some remote desert resort.
Wow. Okay. Sets the scene.
Totally. Private jets, total isolation.
Yeah.
And the questions they asked him.
They started off pretty standard, didn't they? Tech stuff, finance.
Yeah, Bitcoin versus Ethereum,
Yeah.
VR versus AR, quantum computing, stuff he could handle easily.
But then it shifted.
Dramatically. From abstract tech strategy to, hardcore practical survivalism.
Like what?
Questions like, which location is safer if things collapse, New Zealand or Alaska? Which disaster is more likely, extreme climate change or, say, weaponized bacteria? How long does a bunker really need to last without any outside help? Should the air and water be totally self-contained?
So really specific, practical stuff.
And Rushkoff said, you could tell these weren't just random what-ifs. They weren't asking if they should build bunkers. They were asking for advice on bunkers they are already building or had almost finished.
And they mentioned New Zealand specifically. That comes up a lot.
Yeah, they brought that up. Seems like a favorite spot. But then, he says, came the kicker. The final question.
Okay.
In a total societal collapse, when money is worthless, how do you guarantee the loyalty of your security team? Your guards.
Oof. That's dark.
Right. Rushkoff said that question revealed their deepest fear. It wasn't just the chaos outside the walls.
It was losing control inside the walls, over the people they'd need.
Exactly. The people they plan to bring with them, or maybe people who could become a threat. And the solutions they apparently floated. Truly dystopian stuff, according to Rushkoff.
Like?
Ideas like designing food storage so only the owner could unlock it. Basically threatening starvation to keep guards in line.
Seriously?
Or using control collars, explosives, electric shocks. Or maybe just replacing humans altogether with authoritarian robot guards, if they could.
Wow. Okay, that's way beyond just prepping. That's planning for total control in a broken world.
Yeah. Which brings us to the, so what? What does all this mean? The luxury bunkers, these massive self-contained compounds, these chilling chats about controlling guards, what does it signify for the rest of us?
Because based on CNA and Rushkoff, this isn't just fancy disaster prep.
No. CNA talks about creating self-sustaining ecosystems, controlling everything. Land, food, buildings, labor. They even compared it to medieval-era feudal lords.
And Zuckerberg's place was the prime example, this ecosystem of one's own.
Exactly. And Rushkoff takes it even further. He argues these billionaires aren't just reacting to a future they see coming. They might be actively creating it through the tech and the economic systems they promote, pushing us towards that cyberpunk reality he talks about.
How so? Creating it how?
Well, through this idea of technology and automation being dehumanizing, reducing the need for actual human input in making things, providing services. He uses the analogy of like handmade stuff versus machine-made or home cooking versus delivery apps. Automation, in his view, is making fewer and fewer people seem necessary or valuable in the economy.
Leaving a lot of people behind, essentially.
Potentially, yes. And the CNA source makes a really important point here, too. This level of prep, it's not necessarily because they have secret info or are uniquely paranoid.
It's just they can afford it.
It's a direct result of having absolutely colossal amounts of extra money. They could just make these kinds of extreme bets against the future.
Right. CNA called it a diversified portfolio of bets, didn't they? Space travel like Musk, cryonics, mind uploading, Peter Thiel and parabiosis.
Yeah, all these long-shot bets on personal survival. When you have billions, spending, a few $100 million on an escape hatch is just diversification.
Which is such a stark contrast to how ordinary people deal with feeling insecure. CNA pointed out Zuckerberg's compound cost, over $200 million? But that's less than 0.2% of his net worth.
Right. Meanwhile, for most people, buying even that basic $58,000 bunker from Rising S, that's a massive sacrifice, probably impossible.
So most people end up, like CNA said, panic buying toilet paper in 2020, coping in cheap, accessible ways.
It's a totally different world. And Rushkoff's conclusion in that YouTube piece is really provocative. He suggests these guys seem incredibly pessimistic, like they think collapse is basically inevitable.
So they invest because they have the tech and the money to try and escape reality, build their own little worlds?
Yeah, but crucially, he thinks they don't believe they can stop the disaster for everyone else. Their focus is purely on their own survival, maybe their immediate families.
Almost like they're detaching, cutting ties with the rest of humanity's fate.
That's exactly Rushkoff's phrase, severing ties with the human destiny community. He contrasts them with older rulers who, actually needed and valued the people they ruled.
Whereas these 21st century rulers, as he calls them,
seem disconnected, building a future that looks slick and convenient on the surface, maybe, but is ultimately hard to survive in for the majority because human value itself has been chipped away.
Okay, so let's bring this back around to you listening to this. Why does this trend, this glimpse into how the super rich are preparing, actually matter to you? It's more than just, weird rich people stuff.
Yeah, definitely, because it digs into really fundamental things about everyone's future. It says something about where technology is heading, the automation, the AI that Rushkoff warns about, how that could change the value of work.
Right. And it really throws social inequality into sharp relief. What happens when a tiny group has the money and maybe the mindset to just check out from the rest of society?
And what does it mean if the people with the most power and influence seem so pessimistic about where we're all going that their main focus becomes personal escape rather than, say, fixing the problems they see coming?
That idea from Rushkoff is sticky, isn't it? That maybe we're at a turning point, we're enjoying the convenience of all this tech, but maybe we're missing the underlying problems it's creating, problems the billionaires seem very aware of and are actively hedging against.
So just to kind of wrap up this deep dive, yes, the sources clearly show the ultra-wealthy are spending huge sums on these incredibly advanced luxury survival bunkers and compounds.
Driven by a belief, it seems, that major social or environmental collapse is a real possibility.
In some perspectives, particularly Rushkoff's, push further, arguing this isn't just passive prep. It might be a response to a future they are, maybe unintentionally, helping create through the very economic and tech shifts they lead, shifts that could reduce human value for many.
So it leaves you with a pretty powerful, maybe unsettling thought to chew on.
Yeah. If those with the most resources, the most influence, are actively planning their escape route from the future they anticipate, what does that signal for the rest of us?
And what responsibility, if any, do they have to the world they seem prepared to leave behind?
Or maybe using that silo idea that came up, if they're planning for underground life or Mars. What does that imply about the surface world they expect to leave? What truths about our society's fragility are they trying to wall off or escape from instead of facing?
Definitely a lot to think about there.